Hello, good afternoon. It is the 16th of August 2023 and I'm reading out of Eyes of Horus. I'm in the first part of this book. I've just started it and it is the third chapter of part 1 and it's entitled POYOK, the Wild Cat. POYOK, the Wild Cat. When I told Kias all that Necht Ra had told me about our mother, she was interested, but more as though it were a story that something that had happened to a real person. She said, poor Oyabe, she did have an awfully horrid life, and Necht Ra didn't tell you about the nice part, the part with father and you and me in it. It must have been so dull living in a little temple with only an old man to talk to, even if he was a nice old man like Necht Ra. The other temple must have been just as bad, not so dull, but more horrid. I hope all the other girls who were nasty to her came out all over spots and died soon. It couldn't have been a dull life, Kias, at least not after she had got away from her stupid parents, because she must have remembered doing much more exciting things than we do, even on our most adventuring days. She could walk backwards and forwards through the centuries as though the years were the trees of an avenue. That couldn't have been dull. It all depends, said Kias, on what the centuries were like, and how much trouble it was to remember them. Necht Ra told me it was very difficult to remember, worse than learning writing signs. I think remembering is so much the most important thing to do that when I've learned how. I don't suppose I'll bother to do anything else. I shall just wake up enough to write down what I've dreamt and then go to sleep again. I think that's a silly idea. You would be so dull for everybody else, and then your dreams would be dull too, and no one would want to read them. Your legs and arms would get all flabby if you never ran about or went swimming, and you'd be almost sure to get fat. I'd hate to have a fat brother, even if other people thought he was full of magic. Not that they would. Mother wasn't fat. She was the most beautiful person that ever happened. Much more beautiful than you'll ever be. And Necht Ra says she was a fully initiated priest. He said she followed in the way of Anubis, and that's what I am going to do when I remember how. I know all about Anubis, said Kias. He is the god that looks like a jackal, and one that's in father's little sanctuary, which Niam told me he had built for mother. I always liked Anubis the best of the gods. He reminds me of antelopes. I knew she was trying to make me annoyed, because antelopes was a kind of wooden lion that was her favorite toy. She was always making up stories about it and expecting me to believe in them. I know you're only 6, Kias, but if you tried hard, I don't think you could be quite so stupid. If you tried hard, I don't think you could go on trying to be quite so clever. Even Niam says you are sometimes as solemn as an old man. She's quite right, and it's the very old mumbly kind, so you'd better stop before it becomes such a habit that you can't. Sometimes I think it's very unfair you were born a girl. If only you hadn't been, or I'd been a girl too, I could give you a really hard slap. She giggled. You try, and I'll yell, and then Niam will come, and then she'll slap you, and I'll laugh. Come on, smack me. She bent over and pulled up her tunic. Come on, smack me, if you want to. Oh, how I wanted to slap her. I was so angry, it wouldn't have been a small slap either. Then I saw she had bent so far forward that she was watching me through her legs, and her face was so funny upside down that I laughed too. She wasn't very often in that sort of mood. I should have realized she was having what Niam called one of her difficult days. When she had them, they were difficult for everybody, sometimes even for father. It usually began with her having a nightmare and waking up screaming. I would go into her room to see what was the matter, but she never seemed to remember much, only something vague about people or things chasing her through mud, which clutched at her feet when she tried to run away. She would wiggle when Niam was trying to comb her hair and make a fuss, as a duck might if it was being plucked before anyone had taken the trouble to kill it. Then she said the milk was sour, and when another bowl was brought, she would find another excuse for not drinking it. She was very good at excuses. Once she almost made Niam believe that the reason she wouldn't drink it was because her goat had been so unhappy at its kid being taken away that it had left its unhappiness in the milk. She said she could see blobs of unhappiness floating on the top as clearly as if they were drowning flies. I always tried to argue her into a better temper, but it never did much good, though she was always better with me than with other people. Probably next day she'd wake up friendly again, and if anyone referred to how unpleasant she'd been the day before, she'd say disarmingly, "I know. The moment I woke up yesterday, I said to myself, this is going to be a difficult day." And I was right, wasn't I? She became nice again as soon as we had both laughed after I hadn't quite slapped her. She said, "The trouble with most people is that they're a little bit cross every day, and no one notices it. The trouble with me is that after I've been solidly nice for days and days and days, all the crossness that I haven't let myself have for all that time piles up into a great big mountain, and then the most extraordinary thing happens. The mountain turns into a wild cat, and the wild cat turns into me. How can I help being cross when I'm not me at all, but a horrid, fierce, wild cat? I think I'll call you by a different name on your wildcat days. POYOK, the clawed one." "That's a very good idea. Are you going on being POYOK all day?" "Well, the extraordinary thing is," she said solemnly, "when I woke up this morning I was almost sure I was, though I didn't make up the fly in the milk. There really was one there. I knew perfectly well that Niam had only taken the bowl out of the room and then come back again and pretended it was a fresh lot. But now I'm almost sure I'm not POYOK anymore." She flung her arms around me. Dear Ra'ab, I've been so horrid to you. You did know it was really POYOK and not me, didn't you? I've decided I hate being POYOK. I wish antelopes had snarly teeth instead of smiling all the time, for a lion could eat a wild cat right up, even if it was a specially fierce wild cat called POYOK. I've just had a lovely idea. We'll pretend antelopes has eaten POYOK, and then I can be nice all the time. Don't you think that's a lovely idea? Yes, I do. You didn't really mean what you said about me getting fat if I tried to remember properly. I don't think I would have dull things to remember, for the bits I do wake up with are usually very exciting. Of course I didn't mean it. It wasn't me who said it. It was that horrid POYOK, and she's dead now. She picked up antelopes and patted his stomach. Look how full up he is. He's busy digesting the whole of a wild cat. That's never going to be a trouble to us anymore. Then you will help me to remember? Of course I'll help you. What shall I do? Ask me first thing every morning what I've dreamt about, and pretend you're interested even if you're not. And when I come to see you before I go to bed, say, dream well instead of sleep well. That'll help reminding me to remember. You'll have to do it for weeks and months, and perhaps even years, because Nectarar said that was how Mother practiced. And it must have been much more difficult for her, because no one in her horrid family would help her. She had to do it all by herself without anyone understanding how difficult it was and how dull sometimes. You said remembering couldn't be dull. Well, Nectarar said that the making yourself remember part was dull sometimes. It means always waking up suddenly instead of having the nice, comfortable time before you open your eyes. Not being woken up, but waking yourself up. He said it is rather like trying to catch a fish in your hand, and if you're not very quick, the dream wriggles back into forgetfulness, and you've lost it. Then there is lots of little things that are important to remember, even though they are not all exciting. Same as it's important to hit the target gazelle, even though it's only painted on linen. They're both part of the practicing you have to do. What kind of unexciting things? If in a dream you're walking down an avenue, you've got to try to notice exactly how many trees there are and how widely apart they are spaced, and the shape and color of the leaves. And if something attacks you, you mustn't just run away unless you know why you're running. I shouldn't like that part, said Kios. When I see something that should be run away from, I just run. And if it's going to catch me, I scream to myself to wake up. I do think it's brave of you to want to follow Anubis if he's going to lead you into places you can't run away from, however frightening they are. Father says fear is the only real enemy. I suppose he's right, really. He says Set and Fear are two names of the god of evil. Could Anubis show you how to kill fear? I don't know. He hasn't accepted me yet, and perhaps he never will. But I think if I follow him long enough, he'll teach me not to run away from things. And perhaps when you're not running away, nothing is so very frightening. You will promise to remind me to tell you my dreams every morning? I promise, said Kias. This is the end of chapter 3. Have a good Wednesday.